And one of the things you've called for is the abolition of ICE. And as you've talked about it, I've noticed that you have said what it would afford us is an opportunity to really rethink our immigration system. And one of the things I've also really appreciated about how you've approached immigration is that you've noticed that Republicans haven't always been anti-immigration reform.
Right. That is absolutely correct.
And I worked in the Bush administration around the time that you were working for Ted Kennedy on comprehensive immigration reform. If you had the opportunity to really reimagine it, right, beyond the conversations about ICE, sort of what would be your priorities?
I think we have to look at it in the context of greater policies. What our foreign policy is, what our local criminal justice policies are, tend to have a very large impact on who's coming in and who's coming out. We have always legislated from a place of how do we exclude and who do we exclude? And I just think that that's the wrong question. I think what we need to do is we look at our foreign policy, for example. When we decide to intervene militarily in a place abroad, I think that in that same conversation, we need to say, how many refugees are we willing to accept as a consequence of our involvement? We need to have those conversations right there in the same time and place, because I think it will force us to recognize the consequences of our decisions, the potential consequences of our decisions. When we talk about, foreign trade, or when we talk about regime change abroad, I think that we need to have discussions about what that would mean on our shores and what that would mean for the potential of human migration.
It seems to me there is this debate on the far left or the progressive left about whether low-skilled immigration is acceptable, and so I wonder if you had the ability to really start from scratch, would you do it? Would you? Bernie Sanders has even laughed at sort of open borders as being like a Koch brothers program, and Bernie Sanders, right, who is a person that you organized for, but who was vehemently opposed to the 2007 immigration reform bill that was passing through the Senate. So which side of the sort of fence do you fall on?
So I think this is a really good question. When it comes to low-skilled immigration, I think that the problem with taking that approach is the assumption that people coming in are only weights or only have like some kind of parasitic relationship to the U.S. economy. And that's not true. Every single person is a source of economic activity, I think. And what we see is that immigrants are one of the most entrepreneurial populations in the United States. My district alone is 50% immigrant. You will not find more vendors in New York City than you will find here. And so this idea that something is low skill and that it's going to be a weight, I think is probably a false lens.
Do you think that when people say low skilled, though, they think it's a weight on the economy? Because I think of it as sort of the robust driver of the economy.
Yeah, I would hope more people would take your perspective. But I think, especially now with this current administration, the narrative is the amount of jobs in America are finite and that it's zero sum, and someone that's low skill is going to take my job, which is false.